My father is from Nanjing, Jiangsu province, so my ancestral home is Nanjing. But his strict education made me very rebellious. I resisted this place name in my heart for a long time. I became very busy when I grew up. My father has taken Jingjing to Nanjing twice before. Chinese people take a great fancy to their ancestral home. The elders will take their younger generation back to their ancestral home to worship their ancestors or participate in major festival activities and visit relatives and friends. It would be nice if city children went to the countryside. After all, the natural environment of the countryside created a lot of surprises. Children in natural environment can contact the happiness that cannot be found in a high-rise building. In many children's minds, food in the countryside tastes better, and many children feel stronger after living in the countryside for a period of time. Friends and colleagues will know about each other's ancestral home. They even speculative on their personality and living habit from ancestral home. No matter where are you now, but cannot forget from where are you coming. We get nourishment from the water, land, and food in our hometown. After many generations cannot eliminate the stamp of the ancestral home. Life and food culture habits will be engraved to the gene generation to generation, so that our culture civilization can be inherited. With our original genes to explore the world, to understand the world and to the world. We are like a towering tree. Both have strong foundation and luxuriant leaves. Will not be like a duckweed floating in the wind is swept away. This was what I understood later because I found that no matter how I avoided rejection, I was still deeper joined with my father. Although I grew up in my mother's family, eat Liuzhou food to accept Liuzhou regional culture and do not communicate with my father too much. But my personality and work style are very similar to my father and my relatives in Nanjing. I have to say sorry to elders of the Zhang family. I was sad for a long time because I could not inherit the outstanding good study gene of the Long family. At work to meet Jiangsu, Zhejiang, and Shanghai both are very good to me. I think I have a special fate with them. My uncle started preparing when I told him I was coming to Nanjing and kept asking 1 hour flight arrival. We were afraid to bother him, didn't tell him arrival time. But when he knew we had arrival in the city center of Nanjing, he hurried to come over. That night, he took us to have a night tour of the ancient city of Nanjing. I saw him when he went to Beihai 28 years ago, but he's like we meet every day. From our arrival in Nanjing to leave Nanjing, he always with us together and took us to see relatives in Nanjing. I spent an unforgettable week in Nanjing. Went to the primary school where my father attended when he was a child, by the river where he often fished as a child. The magic is I clearly came for the first time, but I'm feeling familiar here, and a little regret that I failed to grow from here. Nanjing is a famous historical and cultural city and an important birthplace of the Chinese civilization. The track of ancient human activities existed 1 million years ago. In more than 7,000 years of civilization, there is a history of 2,600 years and more than 500 years of capital construction. I remember only asking my father one question about Nanjing. It's where did he live as a child? He replied it was just under the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge. I thought he was fooling me. How could he live under the bridge? Until my uncle took me to the place where they used to live. They lived was really close to the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge. They were the first batch of the relocated households. The Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge applied for construction in 1958. On January 18, 1960, the main project of the bridge started. With more than 7,000 people, construction up to 10,000 at the same time. It was the most difficult time in China. Many people were not enough to eat. The staff eating carrots and work at the same time. Anshan Iron and Steel Group has developed the first piece of steel suitable for the Nanjing Yangtze River Bridge in China. This kind of steel is still the main steel type of China's steel bridge. After study, they decided to build the piers with the Kaizen method plus pipe injection method. The underwater decompression method adopted in Pier 6 at that time was very inefficient, and the underwater decompression took more than 2 hours. If the pier cannot exit smoothly before the second-year flood season, it will affect the progress. Even in the dry season, the water depth is 66 meters. If over 60 meters and the water needs to change to a helium-oxygen body, helium gas has a relatively small molecular density and a relatively low anesthetic effect, but it cost 2,000 yuan to dive in for once. They found 13 Navy divers and professional doctors, and spent 6 months working on a decompression meter that could dive down 60 meters. Hu Baolin be the first person to the deep rock layer of dozens of meters for electric welding. A group of their workers need to work down to 77 meters, work underwater for 20 minutes. In order to add more good ideas, they encourage everyone to make suggestions. More than 15,000 people suggested in the first year. One worker's suggestion was adopted with 2 yuan reward, which is event forever engraved in his memory. One night in 1961, they found concrete quality problems. The general commander ordered several built piers blown up and rebuilt. In 1964, the piers of the 5th bridge on Weir falls down, causing great danger if the caisson failed to damage the downstream substation. All built piers will not be used. They fight on the scene for 7 days and 7 nights, finally stabilizing the swinging piers. At that time, there was only one computer in China. They needed to learn up 2 or 3 months for them to use it. It only takes half an hour for the computer to calculate the installation data, but the employees have to spend a month or 2. In such a working environment, steel beams erection was completed on August 16, 1967. On September 30, 1968, more than 50,000 people witnessed a train crossing the Nanjing-1 River Bridge, so that the river crossing time, which used to take more than 2 hours, is shortened to 2 minutes. 3 months later, the highway bridge was completed and opened to traffic. The total cost of the project is only 287 million yuan, with a total length of 6,772 meters. On September 26, 1969, 80 tanks and over 60 vehicles of various types were passed through the Nanjing-1 River Bridge intact. At 10 p.m. on 28 October 2016, the Nanjing-1 River Bridge, which has been working for 48 years, was fully closed for 27 months under upgrading maintenance and reinforcement. They found that 1.55 million rebuilds needed only more than 6,000 replacements. Only 4/1000 attrition rate. If I had not checked the information to make the video, I would not have noticed the difficult construction of the Nanjing-1 River Bridge. The effort and great work of the staff at that time. It took nearly a decade to build the bridge. In 1960, it was recorded in the Guinness World Records as the world's longest highway and railway bridge, although some longer bridge was built in the after. But it's our first bridge to build with independent innovation technology. As a descendant of Nanjing, some things we can't avoid history is the Nanjing massacre occurred in Nanjing. It's the slaughter of very few atrocities of the same intensity in human history. Before the Japanese army broke the gate of Nanjing, as long as the capable Nanjing people fled out of the Nanjing, before the outbreak of the war, Nanjing population was more than 1 million and only 500,000 by December. On December 11, 1937, Tang Shenzhi, commander-in-chief of the city, received a telegram from Chiang Kai-shek. If you cannot maintain the situation, you should seize the opportunity to retreat. Pressure your strength and reorganize the team. Prepare to fight back in the future. Zhongzhen 11th. At noon on December 12th, he issued an order to retreat. The original order was to defend the city, suddenly changed to retreat. They were in a panic and ran to the bottom of the city to try to climb over the wall. The soldiers tore their clothes into cloth, made them like rope ladders, causing many to fall to death. When the last ship disappeared, The soldiers jumped into the river with handball floats water device attempt to swim across the Yangtze River, but almost all of them drowned. These soldiers at the bottom most pitiful groups. The history retreating officials in front left them. The people in the real wars didn't allow them to stay. And the special status of the soldiers made them the first target of the Japanese massacre. They served as soldiers in the war only to protect their families and their countrymen, but they received no understanding and respect. It really said that people want their resentment against the rotten government on them. At first, people believed that the Japanese would be better rulers. After all, the Kuomintang government abandoned Nanjing then in their most dangerous times. Some even hung the Japanese flag at their home and welcomed the Japanese into town at the west and south gates. But in just a few days, they became disillusioned. On December 13, 1937, the large city of Nanjing was occupied by the Japanese army, and the Japanese invaders killed 300,000 civilians in a city of Nanjing more than 40 days. The souls of 300,000 compatriots are buried in the memory hall of the victims' Nanjing massacre. If you go to the Nanjing Massacre Memorial Hall of the victims have to make an appointment. We did so 3 days in advance. My uncle said could not go there because I felt uncomfortable. After I stayed there for a few hours, I could understand how he felt. I can't ask my relatives about the Nanjing massacre. They all avoid relevant topics. I can imagine their psychological shadow. I can't let them get hurt anymore, so I have to find the truth from the box. When I watched the pictures, my tears didn't stop, thinking these innocent souls and hate the perpetrators. Cannot imagine what kind of violence can treat their own kind so cruel. Can humans hurt humans like this? In order to get a deep look into the Nanjing massacre, I bought the books by Zhang Chunru, Zhang Yingying, and the Diary of Rape. This great woman was greatly shocked after reading a lot of literature, leading to insomnia and anorexia. I felt empathy and became unable to eat after the visit. I can be alone to mourn my grandfather in the martyrs' cemetery. The whole mountain only one by one tombstone and me, but I'm not afraid, because we say if don't do anything wrong, do not afraid of ghosts knocking the door. But the torture level of reading is indescribable. When I saw the tragic photos and felt the scene recorded in the book, I shed tears in my heart, and my anger could not vent. Reading her books and the Rape's Diary are very uncomfortable. Often have to stop due to the great physical and psychological pressure. Have to watch the relaxed TV series to relieve the pressure. I give up halfway through reading Rape's Diary. I feel beyond my spiritual endurance, so I could only put it aside to watch it later. Insist on watching a scene immersed in it cannot feel any hope, but also feel Zhang Chunru rape and a number of foreign humanitarian rescue members are valuable. They are the fighter of human pacifism. My cousin's diary of January 9, 1938. The Japanese were trying to discredit our effort in the safe zone. They intimidated and threatened, and the poor Chinese made them refuse to believe our words. Some Chinese are even willing to prove that all looting, rape, and burning down by their compatriots are related to the Japanese. Sometimes I think we are dealing with lunatics and idiots, and to my surprise, all of our foreigners survived the ordeal. Perhaps he didn't know when the people have extreme fear, the body will have a stress response. Hide the things of fear to create themselves a more ideal dream. They may all believe what the Japanese say is true. I understand but feel particularly sad. Sending out leaflets was another way for the Japanese to carry out the false propaganda. During the Nanjing massacre, Japanese planes dropped countless leaflets into the Nanjing people. For example, on the leaflets says all the good Chinese people who return home would get food and clothes. Those Chinese who were not fooled by the devil of Chiang Kai-shek army, and Japan is willing to be your good neighbors. Leaflets also contain color pictures. A handsome Japanese soldier holding Chinese children. As early November, RIP and a group of foreigners planned to establish a security zone in Nanjing and spontaneously set up the International Committee for the Nanjing Security Zone. Member of the Nanjing Security District International Committee, November 23, 1882 to January 5, 1950, was then agent of Siemens and chairman of Nanjing Safety District Committee. He was lived in China for nearly 30 years, and many his children and grandchildren were born in China. After receiving Siemens to send him back to report on his work, he could not leave the Chinese employees and people. Rescued his life dangerous and he suffered from diabetes to stay, and set up the Nanjing Safety District Committee. With all the members, they rescued 250,000 Chinese. Mini-Voltron, 27 September 1886 to 14 May 1941. She is an American missionary. She regards Jingling Women's Arts and Sciences College as a refuge. Rescued many female refugees. 10 of Sauron's people were rescued by her. The film 13 Hairpins in Jingling is based on her and the school. From August 12, 1937 to April 1940. She insisted on keeping a diary, with the original manuscript deposited at the Theological Seminary of Yale Library. On December 1, 1937, the U.S. Embassy for the last time convened the American citizens stranded in Nanjing and warned them, "Without evacuation, we will not be able to protect your life safe." Mini-Voltron said firmly, "I can't abandon China at this time." It was the first time she refused to leave. After rescuing thousands of Chinese, his body and spirit were seriously damaged and suffered from severe depression. On May 14, 1941, on the first anniversary of her departure from China, she ended her life by suicide at the age of 55. Robert Wilson, 1906 to 1967. Born in Nanjing, he went to the United States to study in 1922, where he received his doctorate from Harvard Medical School. In January 1936, he returned to Nanjing and became a doctor at Jingling University Hospital. During that time, he was the only surgeon in Nanjing. He made an average amputation surgery every an hour. In 1946, Wilson traveled to Tokyo, Japan, to testify as the first witness to the Nanjing massacre at the Far East International Military Court, where the war criminals were tried. George Fage, 1883 to 1979. He sold 8 plates of 16mm film into his coat. This film recorded the Japanese massacre of Chinese soldiers who laid down their arms and innocent refugees. In 1946, he attended the trial of war criminals by the International Military Court in Tokyo as a witness. John Maggie, he was born in 1884 in an American law family. He is a missionary. He was active in rescuing refugees. Rosen, government secretary of the Nanjing officer of the German embassy, who has actively participated in the rescue of refugees. Rape and Voltron still overestimated the brutality and the power of these people, and even hoped to communicate with these murderous demons. More people lost their lives. On December 14, on a drive through the city, we vary land the level of damage. We encounter several bodies every 100 to 200 meters away. They were all civilians who were hit from behind on the way to escape. We placed about 1,000 Chinese soldiers in the Justice Department building. They take about 400 to 500 people were bundled and forcibly dragged away. We heard a count of different machine gun shots. They are all supposed to be shot. On December 16th, I had just heard that hundreds of more disarmed soldiers had been dragged out of the safe zone and shot. 50 of these police officers were also going to be executed. Yesterday, on December 18, 1,000 women fled to Jingling University after being raped or robbed in their homes. The Japanese soldiers raped 2 women in his family at the gentleman's house and forced him beside of him to look. Daytime in public, Japanese soldiers raped multiple women. in a hall crowded with refugees at the seminary. There are also appalling and vicious killing contests. Two soldiers compete. Who killed 101st? Who wins? On December 10, 1937, they meet in Zijing mountain of Nanjing. The former killed 106 people. The latter killed 105 people. Because it was impossible to tell the winner, the number was increased to 150. At that time, Japanese newspapers followed the whole process, and more than 200 civilians and prisoners of war in Nanjing died under their knives. In Japan, they are regarded as heroes and continue to publicize in the newspapers. The Japanese 16th Division was later defeated, and both were never found among the prisoners of war. Chinese agents made a vow. Even if find every corner of Japan, we have to find these two beasts. The agents finally found them and extradited them back to China with the help of the United States. On January 27, 1948, the Chinese military court sentenced the two beasts to death. They were executed in Yuhuatai in Nanjing, China. To commemorate this history, December 13 every year is the Memorial Day for the victims of the Nanjing Massacre. What was even more powerless was that our country was just being founded. The state, the victims, and the survivors received no compensation or even an apology. Most of the victims have now died, but they didn't wait until an apology. According to the information I found, for two reasons. First, we have to just establish of China. There are too many things to do. We really don't have time and energy to consider the issue of compensation. Second, our leader at that time believed human life is priceless. No matter how much you compensate for, it cannot erase the history of the killing. We cannot profane a life. Of course, the Nanjing Massacre will never happen again, because we countless martyrs with their blood life to today's China has brought confidence. So we have enough ability to protect our country from foreign invasion again. In 1946, Rabe at the age of 64 had difficulty living in Germany. People of Nanjing rushed to donate money. In just a few days, they raised 100 million yuan, equivalent to $2,000, and remitted to Rabe, and sent a pack of food a month. The mayor of Nanjing personally went to Switzerland to buy milk powder, sugar, tea, coffee, butter, beef, jam, and medicine, sent it to him, and tell him if he wanted to live in China, could provide free housing and a life pension, but Rabe was reluctant to leave Germany. On January 5, 1950, Rabe, 68, died of a stroke in West Berlin. In 1997, Rabe's tombstone was moved from Berlin to Nanjing. At the end of March 2020, Chinese ambassador to Germany Wu Ken received a message for help from Dr. Thomas. He was the grandson of Rabe. He wants China to help him get drugs for COVID-19. The ambassador immediately reported it to the Central Committee. Central instructions: try your best to help. And immediately contacted a pharmaceutical company in Zhejiang province. When the drug company knew it was Rabe's offspring, they expressed going to providing free medicine. They raised 880 bottles of designated drugs, 30,000 masks, and 200 protective suits, and immediately posted it to them. At that time, our situation was so severe, we had to show identity card to buy a bottle of cough medicine, and queued for 1 or 2 hours to buy 2 masks. Every time we waste a mask to go out, so most of us afraid to go out. But when people know about it, they say it must to help. This is the blood inheritance we mentioned earlier. Rabe and his partner saved 250,000 people in China 83 years ago. Now his grandson wants to use medicine to treat himself and others. For nearly 100 years, their family has been saving lives, and they carry the hero gene. The process of writing and checking materials is particularly painful. I once wanted to escape this history but cannot pretend to know. It was only planned to take 10 days to make this video about Nanjing. Now it has been done for 40 days but not finished. It took me a week to finish this English recording. I had to stop to count down many times in the middle. I know this video caused a lot of visual discomfort. I'm sorry to record this. But thinking of this foreigner who had helped us, I picked up the books again. As foreigners, they saved the life of people who had nothing to do with them, and restored the unknown truth to the public. Their spirit and body were greatly tortured. Especially Zhang Chunru and Wei Chun as women must have too much physical and mentally. After seeing so many brutal scenes, later suffer from depression, choose to suicide to free from pain. And we just listen to their names, to understand their deeds and feel in their spirits. It should not be a waste of time. They are foreigners, risking their life to save people, but can we even record history? As a descendant of Nanjing, I have the responsibility to let my children understand this history and remember it. After reading a lot of modern Chinese history, I especially understand why we are particularly disgusted with the invaders. Before there was no internet, news dissemination may take months or even longer. When all the Chinese knew about the insult we had suffered, we began to unite against the foreign enemies, which is why we were particularly firm and brave when we fought later. Many people were to give their life because they want to protect behind them the families, land, and compatriots. In the Mandarin Chinese, country, 国家, and home, 家. Country is before the home. Home is half of the country. A lot of foreigners do not understand why we put the country ahead of our home. Perhaps because of the bully and humiliation we have suffered. Let us know if we don't have national backing, we can't have family. Today is November 30, 2021, during the coronavirus Omicron epidemic. But to be honest, I have been not concerned about the coronavirus news for a long time. Liuzhou, as a low-risk area, has been zero infection for a long time. The total number of 24 cases, infection, and nobody died confirmed in the past 2 years allows us to go out, have dinner, and travel happily. Of course, a beautiful life is inseparable from the protection of the state and the silent effort of a group of people. I turn on the heating at home and use the computer typing because the army guard the border. The police manage public security. Medical staff do epidemic prevention. Water and electricity network has 24 hours uninterrupted staff manage. From my sacrificed grandpa to 300,000 Nanjing compatriots, we are work on the road paid with blood by our ancestors. When I think of this, I have to be grateful for their efforts made and cherish current life, and strive to make own contribution. Maybe this is what they want. I'm sorry for the video of Nanjing gloomy in this time, but I promise the next time I will record the modern bustling Nanjing.
年轻的享受青涩的歌曲，但为了创造梦中那个新天地，你转身匆匆走进风雨。我看见千万个可爱的你，不回头，像笑吟深处奔去。多少个青春背影消失在夜里，换来晨曦。我仰望你看过的星空，穿过百年时空再相逢，你穿过神之前的那个笑容，我都懂。我仰望你看过的星空，脚下大地换了时空，你留在风中摇曳的那抹红，在心中，心中。 举起手，我说出同样誓言，黑白间你的笑容多清晰。你说你从来也不后悔把一生奉献给这片辽阔大地。我多想伸手紧紧拥抱你，告诉你一切都尘埃落定。100年前你梦想的那个新中国有多美丽。我仰望你看过的星空，穿过100年时空再相逢，在此刻我们总会心灵相通，我都懂。我仰望你看过的星空，脚下大地换了时空，你留在风中摇曳的那抹红，在心中。星空穿过100年时空再相逢，在此刻我们总会心灵相通，我都懂。